For many, September marks the summer winding down and students heading back to the classroom all across the country. In this series on What's the Scope, we're diving straight into the evolution of school design and how we can make schools flexible, future ready, and impactful for every community. I'm Madison Mercado, and you're listening to What's the Scope with Finegold Alexander Architects, the podcast where we share our hands-on approach to projects and how we love to celebrate design that is boundless. Finegold Alexander is a woman-owned architecture firm based in Boston, Massachusetts, with a long history of historic preservation, adaptive reuse, and new construction in the K-12, higher ed, religious, developer, and civic sectors. We're starting off this back-to-school season with a three-part series on the different aspects of school design, from our firm's history with designing learning spaces to educational planning and the importance of interior design.
I'm Christopher Lane with Finegold Alexander Architects. I've been with the firm for 30 years, pretty much working on schools since day one to present.
Hi all. My name is Clara Castro. I'm an architect for Finegold Alexander Architects, and I've been with the firm for almost 5 years.
Glad to have you both here today. So we just want to talk a little bit about school design as a whole and sort of yours as well as the firm's approach to different school projects. I just want to start out with a couple of questions. How have you seen school design evolve over time?
And I'll go first. Over the 30 years I've been at Finegold Alexander, I've worked on early childhood development schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, both public and private. And while the focus has always been on creating learning environments for children, young adults, the biggest shift I've seen is that we're becoming more adept at creating purpose-built spaces to contribute to the delivery of education, providing necessary flexibility for both the student and the faculty. That paired with the professional development creates a learning environment that's both positive and supportive for both the students and the faculty.
For me, the school design has become more interactive, starting with the classrooms and hallways. Classroom having more, different seating arrangements for the students and the teachers to gather, not so much the traditional way. And the hallways have become not just this long hallway, but, zones. We create zones along the hallways for the students and teachers to gather.
Yeah, it's really moving away from the central loaded corridors, exactly, or a central corridor with borders of classrooms on either side, moving away from cells and bells and embracing the concept of neighborhoods, breakout spaces, multifunctional spaces, in areas that are both spontaneous and planned for learning, integrating outdoor learning and celebrating the building even as a teacher has become some of the things we've seen over the years that have stuck. That's not like a one-off and is happening in a project here or there, but we're seeing that type of thing reoccur.
Mm-hmm. How do you work with the clients to accommodate their needs where they know that they don't want that traditional format, or they know that they do want more interactive activities in the hallways and things like that?
At the outset, it's extremely important to understand the goals of the school and establish the guiding principles during the early versioning phases to set the framework for the forthcoming design phase and throughout. This really begins with a series of visioning sessions with the faculty, often the parents, and sometimes the students.
But also a way, for teaching somewhere the community, because this is new for them. And a lot of these schools coming from the traditional way, it's also a learning process for them and still for us what this new approach, more interactive learning is.
Right, and I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer, because from the extreme school design of no corridors, similar to what we're doing in Gladstone in Rhode Island right now, to a more conservative approach with the double-loaded corridors, like we just completed at the Advanced Math and Science Academy, the focus is always on the students. Neither approach is right or wrong, and we often find ourselves finding a hybrid of the two. It's rare to maybe be on one side of that spectrum or the other without the two intermingling to meet both the school and students' needs.
Kind of to go along with that and how you've seen this school design evolution, could you tell me about like an early school project that you've worked on in your careers that will kind of illustrate that evolution of this is what we did in the past, and then a school you're working on right now, like Gladstone or the community group here at Finegold Alexander?
I guess one of my first project at Finegold Alexander was a renovation on Cranston West, that's in Rhode Island. This school, it's your traditional school, was built probably in the late 60s.
Yeah, that's
60s.
fair.
Yeah. At the time I worked, but it was a very massive. So we were asked to do, how we could improve some of the public spaces, and we did a renovation for the lobby and created the lobby a little more welcoming for the students and the parents, and it was a pretty good project, just to break into small spaces this large, massive lobby.
Yeah, and early in my career at Finegold Alexander, my first project was the Chelsea Early Learning Center, which was actually a pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade only, which was interesting. It was the first school I had worked on. That followed by the Brookline High School, which was a much bigger school, high school, but both were in existing buildings, strongly rooted in the historical cells and bells type approach with double-loaded corridors. And from memory back then, granted, this is almost 30 years ago, there was really no question of how education was delivered or the need for purpose-built spaces to deliver certain types of education and curriculum. So it wasn't something that was really talked about openly, or at least I didn't see it. And the notion of professional development of the staff to properly and learn different ways to use spaces really wasn't front and center. It really wasn't until much later in my career that we began to incorporate concepts of project-based learning, breakout spaces, and learning being everywhere within a school. So it's been a pretty amazing process now, and to look back at where things have come. And honestly, I feel gypped in my own education. With what we're building now, I'd love to be in elementary school right now.
You can both answer however you want, because I feel like this question is kind of open-ended, but what are the things that you value in a school's design?
I would say the physical environment and how this is connected to the students and the teachers and the support staff. I think we want them to feel not just a school and institutional, but more like a home. Yeah, it's like that.
So as an architect, I could say how much I value, the built space and the forms and finishes and such. But really, to boil it all down to one thing, if I had to say, it's really the value of the discovery process and the visioning and establishing the guiding principles. This is really where all the excitement starts at the beginning of the job for everybody, is that visioning, understanding what you built, what you're going to build. And it's that initial excitement that will continue and fuel the process as we begin to design and build the school. It's a long process, so to have that excitement right in the beginning and carry that through like a wave is just so exhilarating, and to be a part of it is really great.
How do you keep that energy up as you make it through the rest of the project?
You're always finding something to be excited about. There's so many facets in architecture alone, but in school design, that there's always something exciting to find. I mean, no matter what phase of the project you're in, there's always something.
Yeah, even during construction, I mean, construction will be, kind of like the challenging phase of the project, but still, there's always, maybe a problem could become an opportunity, and how we can improve this space. Or
Do you have any examples of something like that on a recent or past project that happened in construction or any other phase of the
I
project?
think the lobby and answer could be a good example.
Right, of something exciting that happened. Well, I guess that there's always challenges to be found, and whether it's during construction or during design, and the excitement about hitting that challenge head on is finding opportunity in that challenge and not defeat. And that's something working on a lot of existing buildings over the years. That's a skill I think we've all honed at Finegold Alexander, is being able to meet adversity with opportunity, and particularly in existing buildings. And I know this isn't an existing building conversation, but there's a lot to be learned in working on existing buildings that can carry over into new buildings.
What was the AMSA thing you mentioned?
This was actually towards the end of the design phase, construction documents, which is pretty much right before it goes out to the contractor. We have a meeting with the client, and this is when they thought about it. They started looking at the plans and how can we make this lobby? And they wanted to add more program, how we can make this space a little more welcoming. And I guess that could be a good example. So we open it up, and even though it's not that small, still it's a very welcoming space for the students. Yeah.
Well, and I guess if I could add one thing, which is, budget and cost is always in the forefront, and there's a lot of excitement and value in finding value in the design and being able to understand your limitations and get the absolute most out of those limitations when you're designing.
What is something that you both really enjoy about designing schools? Just like a personal tidbit that makes it worth it.
Well, I'll go first. Again, I kind of said this before. There's a lot to architecture. There's a lot to enjoy during the designing of a school, but the two things that are constant on every school or every project that happens in the beginning and the end and throughout is the engagement with the client. And the engagement with the district, the faculty, and the students to understand their needs, identify their desires, and show them what's possible is what I really enjoy the most in designing schools.
Yeah, so one of the things that I enjoy is to explore the massing of this building very conceptually and how it interacts with the site. So that's one part. And then the other one is, interact with the students when we have these visioning sessions. It's really interesting what the kids say they would like to. I have heard, we would like a playground with a dragon. Some they want an airplane or a pool. It's just nice to hear. And this is what I use to get inspired, just to hear what they want. That's one of the things that I enjoy in every school project.
Do you find that you enjoy a certain grade level in a school versus others, like high school versus elementary? Something like that?
Yeah, I can say, having, particularly on Gladstone, where there was a very structured student engagement process throughout design and establishing graphics and the theme, working with the elementary students is really rewarding because they know no bounds and think out of the box every day, all day. And nothing against the high school student, we were all of them once. They tend to be a little more reserved and less likely to speak speak their mind about things, as far-fetched as they may be. Whereas you have some of the elementary students that, I mean, the sky's the limit. And we really embraced that on Gladstone during the student engagement process as we began designing, showing pictures, and getting the kids to pick what things they liked and what type of feelings those images evoked, and using that all to create the guiding principles of the design of the school, and then going back to them and showing the further advancement of the design. And 100 kids in a room oohing and ahhing over imagery of something they're going to eventually be in is just, you just can't make that up.
Yeah. Can't make up childlike wonder.
Actually, I only work with elementary school. Well, AMSA was high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no student engagement at AMSA.
Neither.
Right.
With,
Which is actually segueing an interesting topic, because I mean, schools and districts will vary where we're very engaged with the families and the students from the get-go and throughout, and the faculty. And there's other schools where it's very insular and we don't have contact with even the faculty. There's a board or a committee, and that's who our client is. So we're not having the direct contact. It's not an issue one way or the other, but it changes the dynamic and the energy. And my preference is to be able to have that, at least that initial contact with the real end users to talk about use and preferences and things they like and don't like. But we don't always have that opportunity, and we're still able to design great schools that meet the goals and needs of different districts.
Right. Was that student engagement something that has occurred more in recent years, or was something that you also did back then, but just it still varied by client?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've done it throughout at different levels, but really Cranston and Gladstone was the first one that was very organized. It wasn't a grouping of students. It was every kid in every grade in mass. And I mean, the energy there was fantastic.
It's always fun working with kids when they have no limits, basically, and no filter.
Well, and in the case of Gladstone, you're developing kind of a relationship with these kids because they're seeing you multiple times, so they recognize you, you recognize them. So it's fun to go back to that environment and have a kid recognize you and come up to you and say something or draw a picture of you as they did. So it definitely puts a lot of fun in that phase of the project.
I just wanted to end us out on kind of like a future outlook type of question to see where do you guys think the future of school design is heading?
I think it's more, I'm going to speak on the material standpoint. Using recycling materials throughout the space, I think this is going to be a more enforced engage in the industry. And using more materials with recycled content, so it's less going to the landfills. I think this is going to be a big change in the future for the schools.
I mean, without going down the rabbit hole, I still think we're at the earlier stages of remote learning and how COVID affected us all with being able to work or learn from anywhere, and the schools really needing to figure that out fast. I still think there's a lot that could be done there for remote learning, not necessarily in place of in-person learning, but as being able to reach out and have more opportunities to learn internationally. So I think we're tapping into that a lot more than we ever have before. But I think that the concept of open plans or schools without corridors isn't really a new concept. I know Methuen High School, which we renovated years ago, was originally designed as an open concept type school with no corridors, or a corridor but with open classrooms off that corridor, which became problematic. And we later came in and did some renovation to the school, adding transparency and lighting, as well as breakout spaces and better circulation. So kind of in that notion, I believe history will repeat itself, as it always does in the history of our lives. So while I believe the purpose-built spaces within schools and schools without corridors will continue to develop over the years to come, I really think there'll be a time in the future that they look back at what we're doing now much differently, and something else will transpire. Don't know what it is, but that's what I think will end up happening.
Yeah, I could see that happening in both the layout of the school and also the materials, like you were saying, Clara, because like in 50 years they might find that something is bad, like there was lead in the paint before and something like that, and that could come back around.
The great product of today is tomorrow's hazardous material.
Yeah.
Well, and I can't help but think, so as we're doing a lot of this now, we're so early in this that the kids that are going through this new concept or newer concept of schools, what are their lives like when they're 30, and what did we learn during that process that maybe needs to be tweaked or changed, or their own views about what could be done better, which we don't know yet because we're so early in this development of what a school is.
Thank you for listening to What's the Scope with Finegold Alexander Architects. This episode was produced and edited by Madison Mercado with music from the YouTube Music Library. Tune in next week to hear about educational planning in school design. Find us at faainc.com and connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Finegold Alexander Architects. See you next week.